some would say, a special way. I want to give you a few examples without extensive definitions. When I was 4 years old, my younger brother was 7 months, and our 3 older sisters were quite young. Neither had reached the teenage level. Somewhere about 4 o'clock in the morning of February 7th, 1940, our mother died. My father woke us up, each one of us, except our younger 7-month-old brother, and took us to the bedside of our mother who was dying. And we watched. We heard the noise in her throat as she breathed out her last breath, a young woman, 35 years old. We didn't have a telephone. My father left the house and walked to the house of various neighbors, to another house of a white family, to borrow their telephone, but he couldn't go in the house. He had to relay the information, and they made the call to the undertaker, to the funeral director. But about before sunrise, across the fields and paths and roadways and across the creek and the branch and foot logs, people were coming. Sister Mary Truitt, Sister Fanny King, who lived to be 109, Sister Carrie Lovelace, Sister Eliza Flowers, they all walked. They came to the house and prepared our mother's body for the funeral director. They covered the mirrors in the house and turned down the clocks. They cooked food. They ministered to us. Where did they come from? Across the fields, cornfields, and cotton fields. Where did they come from? They came from the church. All of them. They came as ministers to this now motherless family and to this now widowed husband and father with the responsibility of taking care of 5 children. That same crowd was present when we were baptized. That same crowd was present when I gave my first sermon. That same crowd, without formal invitations, that same crowd was present when I graduated from high school. That same crowd was present when I gave my first sermon and gave me an offering that took care, Dr. Smith, of my first semester's expenses. That same crowd watched over us, prayed for us and with us, disciplined us, and shared our dreams and hopes and aspirations. The last time I talked with one of them before she entered a house not made with hands, I said, Sister Evans, how you doing? She said, son, I'm just living between, oh Lord, and thank you, Jesus. It was this kind of community that protected us in the midst of a brutal, ugly, racist, violent environment. And that was the black church. The question is, does it still exist? And if not, can it be recreated? Those are the questions we must wrestle with. Now, when our elementary school burned down, it was a one-room school with 2 doors and 3 windows. One dictionary with some of the pages torn out, and all of the books were secondhand, hand-me-down, used books from the white school.
Yes, sir.
When that school burned down, the principal, who was the clerk of the church, who tried with the help of the older young men to put the building out when it caught fire, but the flames overtook everything. And when they could no longer manage, the school burned down, and we walked from where the schoolhouse was located to the church house. And that became the schoolhouse for the next 4 or 5 years. The County Board of Education never visited. Does that kind of church still exist? Where is it? If not, can it be, or should it be, recreated? In that little schoolhouse, I fell in love with my 2nd grade teacher. It was a heavy situation. Miss Mabry. I dreamed about her every night. Only nights I didn't dream about her were the nights I didn't dream at all, Bishop McKenzie. And she gave us an assignment, an oratorical contest. And an award was designated for the winner. And I learned my speech. I had a little nut tree, nothing would it bear but a silver nutmeg and a golden pear. The King of Spain's daughter came to visit me, all because of my little nut tree. I skipped over water, I danced over sea, and all the birds in the air could not catch me. I won the contest. But I was really speaking for Miss Mabry, because she was the one who smiled at me when I came into the schoolhouse with a brown bag, buttered biscuits. The butter oozed out of the biscuits and spotted up the brown bag. shared with me her delicate, well-prepared sandwich wrapped up neatly in wax paper. When she looked at me and smiled, it made my education worthwhile. Does that kind of classroom still exist? And if not, should it? And can we reclaim it? I experienced a church that was a house of faith, a house of family, a house of freedom, a house of a prophetic pulpit, a house of integrity, a house of liberation, a house of deep, shouting, spiritual fervor. And there was a connection between that church and the historically black college and university. So, where did I first hear of Morehouse College and Morris Brown and Clark and Spelman and Howard and Fisk? In the black church. So I enrolled at Morehouse when I was about 12 years old because I heard about Benjamin Elijah Mays and many more. I heard about Mordecai Johnson and Mary McLeod Bethune. I heard about Elizabeth Evelyn Wright, founder of Voorhees College. Now, where did the musicians come from? The musicians in that church came from the historically black colleges. Now, I'm talking too long, but I raise the question, does such a church exist anymore? Should it? Can it be reclaimed? A couple of other things, and I'll take my seat. The black church must be global, not, and I make this with great, not trepidation, but with the acknowledgement of its underlying controversy. The black church must be global without being evangelistic. Now that's controversial. That's controversial, and I'll defend it after the meeting. I got your back. My wife and I traveled the end of last year and the beginning of this year to India after a 40-year postponement. That's a story within itself. And I was co-lecturer with Raj Mahan Gandhi, grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. And I traveled as a Christian, he traveled as a Hindu. But in terms of the presence of God in our journey, in our retreat, in our presentations, for we were talking about the impact of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. on the human rights movement in America and in India. But I couldn't tell where my Christianity ended and his Hinduism began. We were in such harmony.